Hello everyone, it's me again, Damon, the head of sales. And today we wanted to discuss with you one of probably the most important aspects when starting this business. Yes, choosing the right location. I already have a certain level of expertise, and I'll try to share it with you. First of all, oddly enough, I would recommend that you decide on your budget. A lot will depend on this. Your budget will help you filter out or set certain criteria when searching for a location, depending on the specific format you plan to implement in your city. First of all, I would probably say that the minimum budget to open a VR park, whether it's a fairly simple park with just an arena, which is our main format, or maybe a larger park with stationary VR zones or even some attractions. But the minimum, I think, is around $100,000. So that's just for the equipment. In that case, you'll probably end up spending around $50,000. Most of the rest will likely go toward renovations. Once we've settled on the budget and have a rough idea of it, because renovations are one of the most unpredictable expense items, we've encountered situations where renovations make up 60 to 70% of the total investment. We've also seen situations and cases we've worked on where it was possible to spend less than 50% of the total investment on renovations. Sometimes people manage with just 30 to 40%. Depending on the region and the initial condition of the premises, the costs can vary a lot. And of course, it also depends on your preferences. So it could be some kind of luxury park where everything is done at the highest level, new technologies are applied, and expensive materials are used. But even with all that, first and foremost, we're probably talking about a business where the main feature is actually the VR itself. And as we all know, when we put on the headset, you can't really see your surroundings anyway, right? But at the same time, we shouldn't forget that our business is mainly about hosting events. This is especially important for moms who bring their kids to events, whether it's a child's birthday party, or maybe it's some kind of school event. They need to take pictures of their kids. They want everything around to look nice because they're going to post these photos on social media, share them with other parents, and that's how word of mouth starts, which will help you in the future. It helps promote your location. The second thing I would advise you to pay attention to is, after all, the competition. Let's put it this way. Our product can basically compete with any other. Obviously, we're not just competing with other VR arena content creators, but with any other entertainment activity. But our main competitors are other VR arenas. So it's probably not worth looking at places where this entertainment is already present or where the market is oversaturated. You'll have to compete with them. Maybe after visiting another arena once, people will come to you next time. Or after visiting you, they might go to another arena next time if it's just as close. So ideally, you want to target areas of the city where there aren't too many entertainment options. But keep in mind that if there are absolutely no entertainment options at all, that doesn't necessarily mean you should set something up there. It's quite possible that this area just isn't suitable. In general, for opening this kind of business, people there might not be willing to spend money. Your prices will probably be very different from the ones your competitors will leave behind in other solvent neighborhoods of your city. Third, I think here you probably need to decide whether to open your business in a shopping center or even better, a mall, or maybe in a standalone building. This question has probably been one of the most frequently asked for about 4 years now. People keep saying to me, Damon, but where should we look? What should we watch for? What should we choose? Should it be a shopping mall or maybe standalone buildings? I always say that you need to look at everything because every space needs to be evaluated and the financial model needs to be prepared specifically for that space. That's because a shopping mall or retail center, of course, gives you foot traffic, but obviously that traffic isn't free. Usually in shopping centers, the rent per square foot is about 1.5 to 2 times higher. So first of all, you need to look at what kind of shopping center it is. If it's just a regular mall without any entertainment, the foot traffic is of lower quality. If it's a shopping and entertainment complex, then the traffic generally becomes a bit more interesting. But again, you need to look at the price. Yes, sometimes shopping malls are now charging outrageous prices per square foot for that kind of foot traffic. And you can even find a space nearby, somewhere next to that mall, a standalone location for half the price. In such cases, if it fits well enough by other parameters, then I might even recommend considering it. Let me explain why. Because the money you save, take rent for example. You have $10 per square foot or $5 and the total area is 5,290 square feet. But right now, we're using simple numbers for an easy calculation. You pay either $5,000 or $2,500 each month for rent. Well, let's go with $2,500. That's what you have left in your pocket, so to speak. And you can reinvest that money into marketing. Yes, in this way, with the help of effective marketing strategies, you can attract even more highly targeted leads using digital marketing, PR marketing, or maybe some kind of local marketing. But just imagine for a moment how much you could actually organize with $2,500. And maybe at the beginning it'll be a bit harder for you because your advertising needs some time to gain momentum and it might not start working right away. The mall's foot traffic will bring you people here and now, but in terms of truly targeted and effective traffic, effective marketing, of course, you'll get more. The budget will allow you to compete at a much higher level. So once again, I'll repeat, you need to look at each space individually. By the way, I recommend that when you start searching for a space, you make yourself some kind of Excel spreadsheet, write everything down, list the main features, and note the pros and cons of each space. That way, everything will be right in front of you, and you'll be able to do some kind of comparative analysis. It will also be convenient for us to help you evaluate various spaces. The next stage, when we are already carefully evaluating the actual space, probably the most important thing to pay attention to first is the possibility of placing the arena. We recommend allocating 1,615 to 3,230 square feet for the arena. That's about 15 to 20 square meters per person. It can be a bit more or less. We think the ideal is around 215 to 270 square feet. Either way, it's more than playable. Again, you also need to look at your competitors. Likewise, if there's a large arena nearby, say approximately 3,230 square feet, you can in fact run around 10 to 12 on it. Up to 16 people. Naturally, they'll be more competitive than you since they can accommodate more. So pay attention to this. In other words, we're back to competition. When you look at competitors, it's not just about location, but also what they have, right? Because it could be a small place. A VR club with 645 to 860 SQFT and stationary VR, and obviously they won't be direct competitors with you if you want to open a full-scale park with VR arenas. And at the same time, if it's the other way around, some huge park with all kinds of entertainment, lots of lounges, then you should definitely pay attention to what they have inside and at what price they're selling it. As for the placement of the VR arena itself, we recommend allocating in this space, as I mentioned, from 1,615 to 3,230 square feet with a proper geometric shape, either square or rectangular, and with as few columns as possible in that area. Columns, protrusions, or any non-load-bearing or load-bearing structures. Walls, since all of that goes into renovations, some things you can remove, some you can't. In principle, almost anything can be worked around. At this point, with today's technology, specifically our specialists, our level designers, as you know, we create each arena individually and by hand. A specialist sits down, assesses the space, and develops some kind of structure, some kind of strategy. They work out the logic for these game maps and try to make them as interesting as possible, making full use of all your available space. At this stage, unfortunately, probably about 60 to 70% of spaces will be rejected because unfortunately, especially in cities, particularly the smaller ones, there aren't many spaces where you can set up an arena well, with quality, and make it interesting, by the way. Even if you do have the opportunity to set up an arena, you need to think about how people will actually get to it. Sometimes the only way to set it up is so that as soon as you enter the park, you end up in the arena. That's one possible option, but we rule that out because there's a certain logic to follow. People should first enter through the main entrance area, where the reception will be, where guests are welcomed, so the underlying logic should also be carefully preserved. We also highly recommend considering and actively looking for spaces where at least 3 walls of your arena will be solid and unmovable. That way, you won't have to leave any space for a passage or for some other area that would otherwise be located behind your arena. Just imagine this scenario, especially if this is along the long side of your building. You have a length of either 50 or 65 feet there, and you'll need to leave a passage that's 65 feet long. Yes, so you have 215 square feet, and you can basically say you're just throwing it away, right? It's inefficient space that isn't making you money. I understand it might be a bit difficult, but that's exactly why we're here. You can reach out to us, not just for help with finding a space, but also with the initial zoning. So we help our partners with this even before signing any contracts. Unlike many other players in the market who say, let's sign first, then we'll look together, and maybe we'll find something. Maybe we won't. And if we do find something, we'll just make do with whatever we get. For us, it's extremely important to actually help you find the right space. The most interesting, efficient, and profitable one possible, so we can create an awesome park there. Next, what else should you definitely pay attention to? Of course, the overall condition of the space. As we all know, renovations these days are quite a thing. They're not cheap at all. That's why not all spaces are created equal, and the basic condition of the property is extremely important. Of course, spaces in shopping malls or entertainment centers are usually much better prepared. Sometimes, like in those cases I mentioned where people spend 30 to 40% of their total investment on renovations, it's most often in shopping malls. Yes, sometimes there's a standalone property where a decent tenant has just moved out, and in that case you already have flooring, ventilation, and air conditioning. In such cases, of course, it's also very appealing and worth considering. But more often, better equipped spaces are found in shopping and entertainment malls. Pay attention to whether there is a sink. This is also extremely important. Look, you'll have lounges, and we recommend that you install at least some kind of sink there. It's very convenient, people appreciate it, they come to celebrate a special day. Having kids, you need to wash your hands before eating, after playing, wash some fruit. So having a mini kitchen with a sink is really great and convenient because sometimes in shopping malls, there just isn't a space like that. And every time having to take the kids out and walk them across half the mall just so they can wash their hands or go to the bathroom, for parents, that's a bit of a hassle and it can affect their overall impression of your park. Also, before you send us the floor plan for an initial layout assessment, be sure to ask the landlord about the fire exit, where it will be located and where you can have the main entrance. These are also very important elements that will bring certain adjustments, and it will be very difficult to redo them in the future. And if we don't know about them, we might create a basic layout, we might sign a contract with you, you might sign a lease with the landlord, and then it turns out that the logic we used for the basic layout it doesn't work for us. All these points need to be clarified before you, of course, sign the contract and seriously start evaluating the space so that neither we nor you waste that time. Let me remind you that we do all of this with you before signing any contracts or making any payments. Yes, so it's extremely important for us to help you choose the right space. Now I'll try to go over with you the advantages you should pay attention to. These are definite points. You can check these off to seriously consider this space. First, the price per square foot. That's obvious. So, the lower it is, the better. Transport accessibility is also extremely important because for large events, whether it's children's birthday parties, parents will be bringing their kids and they'll need somewhere to park. The availability of parking, you understand how important that is, especially in big cities where parking is paid, and if there's none nearby, you have to leave your car somewhere else, maybe far away, and then walk with the kids. You get the idea? The importance of this point, the presence of ventilation and air conditioning, is also a clear advantage, or at least ventilation and air conditioning. Okay, you can still do it yourself, but you need to understand that this will, of course, lead to an increase in your overall budget. And if we're talking about shopping centers or malls, it's really about navigation, just seeing exactly where, on the map, they're offering you this particular space, right? Because sometimes there are just dead spots in shopping centers where people simply don't go. Is this like the very top floor or maybe the opposite? What's that called again? Yeah, the basement. Yeah, on the first floor, people are walking around. There are some cool anchor tenants. People go into the shops and cafes. And then there's, say, the fourth floor, which is barely rented out to anyone. And they're offering you the farthest part of it, basically, where there are no people at all. And yet, the price isn't really much lower. The extra money you pay for being in a shopping mall or retail center, supposedly for foot traffic, won't help you. Because for you, there won't be any traffic. That's why it's important to see exactly where the space is located. The spaces inside a shopping center also pay attention to additional payments. That means things like electricity, cleaning, and even marketing fees or other charges from the shopping center. Sometimes the shopping center offers you certain slots and helps you grow, but other times it's the opposite. A lot depends on how well established the shopping center already is. Also, utilities. I've already mentioned utilities, but there are usually standard payments like electricity, and sometimes there are extra charges like garbage removal. The ability to connect to good, high-speed internet is very important. After all, we're talking about high technology here, assuming our games can actually run. Sometimes, even if you don't need to be online all the time, you'll still have to update or download things occasionally. In those cases, you need to do it quickly. If you have a dedicated line with low bandwidth and slow speed, people will come to you, something will start updating, and you won't be able to accommodate them. They'll just leave. Choosing the right space is a complicated, important, and specific task. This is where you can't afford to make a mistake. And making a mistake is simply not an option. At the very least, we can send you a checklist for selecting premises right from the start. Honestly, everything I talked about today is basically written in it, but of course, working with a manager is much better. Obviously, the checklist will help you at least weed out some unsuitable options right away at the beginning, so you can send us more or less interesting premises. But even among those, about 80 to 90% will of course be rejected. As for the timeline for finding a space, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of the most important stages, and you definitely shouldn't rush it. Sometimes good spaces show up after a while, but you also shouldn't drag things out. So as soon as you see a good option, you need to send it over. Send it to us and we'll evaluate it together with you and try to estimate the financial model as soon as possible. If everything looks great and we fit within the budget you've set, it's time to sign the contract. By the way, speaking of the contract, let me mention something else. At this stage, when you're seriously considering a particular space, you should definitely request a contract that the landlord and tenant usually sign. Sometimes there can be some pretty tricky terms in there. This includes rent holidays, which are extremely important for us. Renovations can take up to 2 months and sometimes even 3. It's very important that you're given this time to complete the renovations. There are also certain conditions regarding insurance. And just recently, I had a case where a partner almost signed a lease agreement, but found out at the very end that, as it turns out, he also needed to insure it. Every square foot is insured, I think, for $450. At the same time, the insurance itself cost him for 5,400 square feet. somewhere around $10,520 or $15,800 he had to pay up front. And as you can imagine, that this money is non-refundable, right? So your financial model and payback period immediately take a big hit. You need to look at all these conditions right from the start because we're going to work through all of this together. Think it over, plan, and dream. And some of the conditions at this particular shopping center or just with this landlord, well, they just don't fit. So we immediately rule it out and focus on searching for some other alternative option, or we choose an alternative that we already have. I'm not going to give you specific numbers or hard limits after which say it's a red flag, like if it's over 1,000 or 2,000 per square meter, you shouldn't consider that space. Generally, the market sorts things out on its own. Of course, there are always some properties that are liquid and some that aren't. It's a hypothetical situation. Well, it's a great shopping mall. The space is a perfect fit. It's a shopping and entertainment center. It gets great foot traffic. They actually give you a really good spot in a high traffic area. And the price, let's just say, will probably be around 25 or so. But at the same time, you can check competitors' prices, compare similar options, and run it all through your financial model. And if the numbers add up, then why not? And if it's worth it, maybe it really is worth it, then it makes sense to consider it, regardless of whether you've already found a space or have some favorites you're looking at. Or even if you've just come up with the idea of opening this kind of business in your city, please reach out to us and leave an application. Together, we'll most likely make this journey much easier for you. We'll help you avoid any critical mistakes when choosing a location, mistakes that could end up being disastrous for you in the future. And that's if you're lucky and it's just disastrous. Sometimes some partners end up closing down after 6 months or a year simply because they chose the wrong location.